Guys, I'll try not to make this part of the video last too long. I've spotted something in the stock markets and I think it's very important and very relevant, and especially at the moment, whilst there's a lot of talk from even brokers, bankers, and not so much governments, because I don't think they want to create problems or panic, but there certainly is a lot of hype around the stock markets at the moment. As you probably know yourselves, if you go to a lot of these expert economists on the YouTube and other sources of media, they'll all say the same thing with regards to when do you think it's going to collapse. Well, the thing is that most of them are saying, right, or will say, it should have already, but it hasn't. And as for putting a time limit on when it will, well, that's anyone's best guess. When I said on my last video that we're probably looking around about March, maybe mid-April, that was because of a bit of simple maths I'd done with regards to the way the dry bulk index was going at the moment. And what maths I associated that with was it's been 8 years since 2008, and that was when the markets crashed the last time. So I simply divided back at that time where the dry bulk index was, which was 9,600, by all the months in the last year, which is 96 months. And it comes out at 100 points a month. So, if we're at 374 or 373 points in the dry bulk index, then it's just a matter of saying, well, each month represents 100 points from that point in time, and it gives you an idea of possibly when things could collapse. Because I believe, shortly after world trade ceases, that we'll get the collapse. But it's not going to be the way you think of it, and that is unless they decide to crash the markets, because right now what they're doing is they're keeping the markets afloat, and it's like a magician. You're watching him on stage, but you don't know quite how he's managing to do the trick. What I'm going to show you right now is exactly how they do the trick in keeping the markets afloat. If we look on the right hand corner at just the FTSE 100 index here, we can see that this morning when the stock markets opened, right, there was a massive jump of over 100 points, this line here. But yesterday when it closed, the markets, as you can see, was at 5,779.92. But when they opened at 5,891. Over 100 points had been added to the stock market somehow, and that's the sleight of hand that the magician does. You see, he's added 100 points to the market in order to keep it around the 6,000 points mark. And as you can see over here, they're up 2.24%. So that's, in essence, what the government are doing. Now remember, what the stock markets represent. They represent the prosperity of a country, and that is measured on the top 100 companies. We've got the FTSE 250 here, which it's all the same, or the FTSE AM all. But the point is this is the trick. This is how the trick is done, and this is how the economy is kept going, and this is what I call plunge protection. And so long as they keep doing this, the stock markets will never crash. But if you compare this with the dry bulk index, you get a picture which looks a little bit more like reality, because if ships aren't travelling round the earth shipping goods to each other's countries, then what you see is a more precise and accurate assessment of global trade. So, to answer that question then, we originally asked, how long is the stock market got before it collapses? Well, it'll keep going on. As long as this adding of extra currency keeps happening, then they're going to, keep the stock markets going along. But they can't do that with the dry bulk index. Even if they try and skew with the figures on the dry bulk index, there are many people out there with various ship tracking programs that can track live ships moving across the Atlantic, Pacific, etc. So essentially what they're doing with the stock market is this. If you just watch this area here, let's give it a 8. There we go. And that's exactly what they do on a morning when they want to open up. If it's dropped too much that they don't like, they just modify it, just as I did do there, and people believe it. What they're trying to do by adding figures to the FTSE 100 or the top 100 countries in the UK and other markets is just tell people that they're more prosperous than what they actually are. The real fact is, as most people know, looking at the dry bulk index, they're as broke as they could possibly be. And I wouldn't be surprised if the FTSE 100 represents the top 100 companies in the UK in which the government actually stealthily own themselves. So with that, guys, I don't think there's any more reason to go on about the stock markets. We've answered the question, when will they collapse? Well, it doesn't really make any difference because the collapse is already taking place, but not on the stocks as we see, what is being presented to us, because all they do is just chuck in another 100 points on the morning, after a week, as we can see here, that it's been falling and it's all back to normal. So the stock market will collapse only when they want it to collapse, but the bulk index is the true representation of trade and how well the economy is doing. And at the moment, as you can see, nothing's been shipped from most of the major countries in the world, so I would say for that reason that no one's buying, and the knock-on effect that will have at some point down the road, possibly, like I suggested, in 3 to 4 months' time. Let's have a look at something a little bit more exciting than this then. So guys, are you ready for this? I believe electricity is dimensional, and the reason why I believe that is because it is electromagnetic, or it is part of the electromagnetic process of how it's been produced. I may have said that wrong, but I think if you just bear with me, you'll grasp where I'm coming from. I'm going to start this video so you can see it. What we're going to be talking about is the plasma around the 2 bushes that I've made on this motor. First of all, as you can see from the date time grouping in the top left hand corner, I built this motor a few days ago to show my son what actually is taking place inside of an electric motor and how it works. I built it out of a bit of plastic perspex. I'll show you a better picture of that at some other point, but mainly what I wanted to talk about is something that came about quite naturally, really, with a bit of discovery. And I want to get to the point of why I'm saying electricity is dimensional, and it is only coming into physical surroundings at the point of it being produced, or when certain effects arise, it comes through this dimension into our reality, and at that point it's able to be used. Now, why do I say that? Well, I'm going to show you in the next few days, or the next video I do, what I built was I took a hard drive motor out, and as you know how fast them things spin up, they require a hard drive accelerator or a motor controller to get them up to some speed. But I put 4 magnets on this like CD disc, so I could rotate it at high speeds. And what I found is that before I rotated it, I just lined up the magnet with one in my hand, and there was quite a large repulsion. When I started to accelerate the motor, that repulsion backed off dramatically. So the only thing that was different between the rotating magnets and the one in my hand, when it got weaker when they was rotating, was the time spent being parallel to the magnet in my hand, so that the repulsion was equal. So what did that tell me? Well, I started to think to myself then that magnetism must be proportionate to the time in some way. I was speaking to a physicist today, and he agreed with me about that, and he also agreed with me about something to do with this plasma as well, because that's what we started to talk about, the plasma which you can see building up around the copper wire which I'm using as a bush. And if you note, it's a green plasma that's been produced. That's because it's copper bush that we're using. I'm pretty sure if I used what is normally used in bushes, which is graphite, it'd be a blue light as opposed to the green one. But the plasma's not the important thing, because that is not the electricity that we see. We just know it's there when it's present. Nobody's actually seen, believe it or not, electricity. What we see is the effect of the air turning to plasma instantly around it when it's being formed. And as you can see here, we've got a nice plasma plume. I'm going to try and get us some better images of this over the next few days with an 80 kilowatt power source that I've got, so we can send, the plasma a good 3 centimeters at the least, and we'll try and slow it down so we can see what's going on. Again, when we see that big spark flying across between the two terminals, it's not electricity that we're actually seeing. We're just seeing the byproduct of electricity being present. So it was when I was watching this magnet spin round and noticed the effect of the repulsion on the other magnet in my hand was getting weaker, that I thought, well, there must be something else at play here, and it must be time, because that's the only thing that has been altered. The time that the magnet is actually coming past the one in my hand, and that's because it's being rotated at such high speed. If it wasn't the case, you would have the same repulsion, and it wouldn't be measured in any different way. So that's why I believe electromagnetism and electricity is a component of time and another dimension. Or I know it sounds crazy, but that's what I think it is that we're witnessing. So, I just thought I'd share that with you. What I was thinking of doing is grounding a wire somewhere and then putting R positive into this plasma that we're producing, because there's no reason why that plasma should not be at the same temperature as the sun's surface. Now you might think that's insane. You only got to look it up and you'll find that I might not be far off from the truth when saying that. But the idea is, if I can get something thin enough into that region where the plasma's being generated, I might be able to tap off a high source of energy from it. It's all theoretical at the moment. That's what I want to experiment a little bit more with. But here's the theory, right? When that rotor, that stator, where the bushes are connected to on the motor, spins slowly, you get an individual spark, similar to the ones that we see on the dry bearing there. You can see them just in that cavity, small sparks. The other thing was, when I put this in slow motion the other day, I could see that when the sparks happened, they actually curved off. And I'm just wondering if that particle, that steel particle, because it would be two steel particles creating that yellow spark and sending it off, if that particle that we see spin off in an arc fashion, whether it was actually spinning and it was only on contact with other things in the ambient air that it was coming into contact with, which was sending it off in that direction. It's a little bit what they see in a particle accelerator, basically. When they collide them, they see these wonderful spirals come off, and I'm just wondering if it's because the particles that are coming off are rotating at very high speeds. Here's the other thing, is when it's spun up very fast, we get a constant arc of plasma. Now think about the sun, right? Could this be a new way of understanding that electrical connection which some people are talking about with the sun? Is the sun, is the thing, guys, is the sun what we actually think it is? And what is setting up the circumstances for the sun to be a plasma ball? It's like having a tiny little sun on the edge of that bush there. And, you know, in reality, the two are very alike. They're very bright. They're emitting photons. We can see them. We know that the plasma is very hot and it's electrical in nature. And, you know, sometimes it's this simple. You can see I'm winding the speed up on it now, and then them plasma arcs are getting very bright. But if that is the case, you see again, it's time related. We start off slow, we get a couple of sparks, we keep the momentum going, and we increase the speed to the point where we get a plasma ball form on the actual bush. Now this isn't something probably that you'd probably see normally, because like I say, you don't usually get see-through motors like the one I built, so most of the time you wouldn't notice this. You might, if you've ever used an electric drill, hand drill, when you pull the trigger you see sparks inside the casing through the air holes. You might have seen it then. It's a similar thing. But, you know, I think this is worth further investigation. I'd certainly like to try and get a temperature reading of the plasma and an electrical reading now. I've been talking again with this physicist. What we were saying is if we ground it to the earth and then, you know, try and get some draw off this, you know, get it. Let's take some measurements of, you know, its potential, because the wire winding that you can see spinning round is generally where we get electricity from when we use DC generators or DC motors, and we use it. You know, we drive the motor with another motor to get it to be a generative supply of electricity. But if we take the electricity not from the coil, but take the electricity direct from the stator, in particular that plasma area or region, we might find, you know, we've got a more efficient way of producing electricity. So how fast then? This is what, just to give you an analogy where we're going with this. How fast does electricity move? Well, it moves at the speed of light. And what happens then if you have something like electricity constantly moving at the speed of light? What happens? Well, as you get closer and closer to the speed of light, things get to slow down and slow down and slow down till the point at which they stop. And hey presto, at the point at which it's travelling at a constant speed, at the speed of light, we see electricity form in this plasma around the bush. So, you know, this in my mind seems very plausible. Think about the sun right now. If this is the case, then the only reason we are seeing the sun is because it is at a constant speed of the speed of light and therefore has stopped. So nothing is being emitted from the sun, really. It's just at its rest point because of its speed it's travelling. Now, it makes sense to me. I spoke to a physicist this afternoon regarding this, and we both agreed, you know, that what we are talking about here is, or has, a highly probability of being correct. So if that's the case, we've got something truly unique that we can all take part in experimenting with. And that's all I wanted to show you, really, guys. You know, I'm going to be doing a few more experiments over the next few days with this, doing those things that I've talked about. You know, trying to take some power off that. You know, I might even try and increase the plasma. It's obviously I'm able to keep the plasma stable. As you can see, I've kept it stable throughout the video that you've watched here for quite some time. So, you know, I'm just thinking about, you know, all the people that have tried to sustain fusion in some form of way. This seems like a very, very simple way of sustaining that. And it's not even in a vacuum. We don't know whether it would improve even more so in a vacuum. But that's where we are. I just thought, that some of you guys are into the science would deeply appreciate this, and maybe some of you guys out there would like to support some of this work we do, and the link below is there for those people that do want to support it. Who knows what comes out of this from here on? But one thing I've always said, if anything does come out of it, it gets distributed freely to everyone, and I think that the rewards will come after, because I don't believe in patenting anything, keeping it quiet, because even if I get something to a stage where it comes to a grinding halt, someone might see at that level that I've got to a potential themselves and take it that little bit further. And at the end of the day, I think what we're all trying to do is work towards the goal of releasing our cells from this government, and the energy bills, and just the restrictions of energy. If energy is something we can all use freely and as much of as we want, then that's what it's all about, isn't it? So guys, links down below. I'm getting a bit tired of saying what I usually do, so I'm just going to say bye, and I'll speak to you in the next video.